I think when a lot of people think about bears in the Ice Age, they think of the cave bear, Ursus spelaeus. But actually, we didn't have cave bears in Creswell Crags. So these bears were present in Creswell Crags during a period known as the Late Pleistocene, which began 125,000 years ago. In that period, we didn't have cave bears at all in Britain. For whatever reason, they didn't actually get back across to Britain from Europe, although they were present earlier on in the Middle Pleistocene. We just had brown bear at Creswell Crags. It's the same species that is alive today, but obviously doesn't live in Britain anymore because humans drove it out, I think, in historical times. It's not as common a find as some of the other animals, but we do have a few teeth of it. Got another one there as well.
So brown bears, like all other animals, I'm sure, in the gorge, played their part in the use of caves. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Like the hyenas, they would have denned in the caves and they would have used the caves for hibernation as well. We don't know for certain they were doing that in Creswell Crags. These individuals might have been brought into the caves by hyenas, but certainly elsewhere in Europe we've got evidence that bears were using the caves for hibernation, because in some areas we find almost complete skeletons of these individuals that probably died during hibernation. I think there's quite a few instances of that in sort of Central Europe, like Austria. I think there's the museum in Vienna has some really nice skeletons on display of brown bears, or possibly cave bears actually in that case, but very similar behaviours.
Where were these found and how long ago? Do we know that?
So these were found in Pinhole. They were found in a layer what's called the Lower Cave Earth, which was basically a hyena den in that area. And we know that that was from the middle of the last glacial period, and from dates on specimens from Pinhole from that period and from elsewhere in Creswell Crags, we know it was roughly around about 40,000 years ago, I think.
But you mentioned a couple of times that the hyenas brought them in, or a hyena cave. Is the idea being that the hyenas attack them? Is it a food chain thing, or how are they brought together?
Hyenas are very proficient hunters and scavengers, and they tended to bring at least some of what they were eating into the caves that they were denning in. Right. So sometimes, like the woolly rhinoceros, they might have been brought in by the hyena, and a lot of bones tend to have gnaw marks on them from the hyenas gnawing or cracking the bones. It's more difficult to determine from the teeth, when we've got just individual teeth, whether they were sort of washed in the caves or whether they were from a carcass and we've lost the rest of the carcass, whether these individuals, the individuals that these teeth came from were denning in the cave, or whether the hyenas brought them in the cave, for example, maybe found a carcass of a bear and brought at least some of it into the cave. It's really difficult to tell after the fact. We don't know whether they were hunting on the bears or whether they just were opportunistic at the time and found a carcass of a bear, whether in the cave itself, because the bear died in the cave, or out on the gorge and then just fed on it and brought at least some of the remains of the carcass into the cave to feed on further.
Staggering. It must be great for you to sort of sit and see all these artefacts, and for something that's so passionate to you and to what you enjoy, to look at all these and think what a different world it was out there on the place you work. How does it make you feel coming to work each day?
It's pretty remarkable, yeah. I do feel quite privileged actually, just sometimes to sit back and be like, these are really old, or to walk through the gorge and imagine hyenas there, or hippos, or woolly rhinoceroses. I mean, it'd be more perilous, I think.
My last question then is we've barely touched the surface with what you've got here at the museum. So presumably these are on show for the public, or they can see different types of teeth, for example, or different bones as well if they were to come along?
Yeah, so these ones themselves don't tend to be on display, but we have the exhibition where you can see hyenas. You can see an almost complete hyena skeleton. You can see the adult hyenas, and some like gnawed bone. You can see a brown bear skull, cave bears, some of the smaller mammals, and also tools that